One thing that I love to have and we can never get enough of is conversations with our customers. There's so much rich data that we can get from that and just wonderful ideas. Entrepreneurship, we think of often as starting a business. That's certainly true. But if you can, you know, build that business and continue to operate it and run and grow the business, it's just such a wonderful and satisfying thing. I think all entrepreneurs kind of get a sense of that.
Welcome back to this special episode on the Marc Campbell podcast, and I'm very excited about this because the holiday season is around and we are in a spirit of giving. If any of you have done any kind of Secret Santa gift exchanges, then you know how much joy, fun, and how people get to bond together, whether you do it with your family, friends, or even within your company. And what I'm going to be having today is a conversation with a man that's taken that idea and brought it into a platform that allows you to do it effortlessly. We have the founder CEO of Elfster, Peter Imburg, who's joining me today, which is the world's largest online Secret Santa gift-giving platform with over 40 million users across 50 countries. And we're going to be having a conversation of the story of building an organization, building a business that take an idea that we were all very familiar with and let it scale, grow, and seeing what are the key points within that journey that allows you to take whatever is your idea, whatever is something you're passionate about, and build something that helps the world, create some value, and a bit more love in the process as well. I can't wait to have this conversation. Very excited to go deeper. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jason. I'm thrilled to be here.
I always like to start with kind of understanding what was the itch that got you into, taking your life and going towards building a business, because building a business is not the default path. Usually there's something you usually see in the world, something you've noticed. And I kind of want to start there about, before you went out and started Elfster, what were you seeing? What were the patterns you've identified that made you go, you know what, we need to create this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have to say, to start with, that I was a little predisposed to be an entrepreneur. My dad was, and I saw, uh, you know, that way of life that seemed really great to me, and so I'd always consider that, and I had been thinking about possibly starting a business or doing something as a matter of career growth and personal growth, and the excitement of starting a business. And around that time, my wife came home and she was chuckling and laughing and telling me the story about how she and my sister they were working together at the time, and they spent their lunch hour trying to set up the Secret Santa for our family. And because all my siblings and I had been married recently, there were a lot more people. We were going to be split up during the holidays, sometimes visiting our in-laws and stuff. So they thought, yeah, let's be simple. We'll just do a Secret Santa. And when she came back and told me like how hard it was, and they had to loop in their coworkers, they had to make sure people weren't drawing themselves. They were going to mail slips all around the country to everybody to do it. I thought, ooh, this might be the one. I love it. It resonated with thoughts I had on giving and the importance of giving in strengthening social bonds. And I thought it had an element of gaming, an element of e-commerce, joyful connection of family and friends. It's like, this is great. So I pretty much, I don't think, sometimes your wife will tell you a story not wanting you to solve a problem. But this was one of those cases where I was just like very much energized to try and solve this problem for our family. And I thought maybe others. So.
Okay. Well, I love that it got inspired, and then you kind of already saw that there was maybe something there, just because in your everyday life, you've encountered a situation, you saw there was lots of friction. And I still
Yep.
want to stay in this beginning phase for a while, because once you've heard that and you went, oh, this could be interesting. What were some of the first steps and the first research things that you would have went to do to kind of validate this idea? Because not all ideas are evaluated equal, I would assume. So what were the
Yeah.
steps you would do from there?
I mean, the very first thing that I thought was there's probably something out here doing this and already, and I'm going to find it, for them. They just didn't think to check. And so I was like looking around and stuff, and there there wasn't. And I didn't do a ton to validate like that there would be a market because, into a lot of research that way. I just knew. I knew other families, large families when I was growing up did Secret Santa. We had done it at work once. I just knew it's there. But it just needed a modern twist. So when I didn't see anything out there, and I had this hunch that there was a market there for this. Um, I really got to work, and I've been working as a software engineer. So, like for me, it meant like building the solution as a start. I definitely pushed myself and grew on the marketing it, but I needed it to be there first. So I really quickly around validation of like basically an opportunity for the lack of a solution. Um, I got right into it.
There's this kind of balance I feel you need to have when you get started where if you want to go and validate the idea, you start doing research, but it kind of can become a trap that you're always looking for like the perfect indicators versus at some point you kind of have to trust your gut. How do you balance that in some of the decision making you make even up to now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that I, that does change with the evolution of the company. I think like in the early years, we did some research. I hired someone actually from my neighborhood, who was amazing, to kind of like think about the future and how millennials are changing everything, and et cetera. Back in the day, that was what we were looking at. So, but I did that gave us a strategic framework to think about, things that were coming ahead. Then when it came to like a lot of tactical decisions have been on a hunch a lot of times. And usually I like to test my hunch and it's successful. Of course, I love that. I've also learned sometimes I test my hunch and it's not successful and the idea just sticks around for a long time. Uh, over the early, after, some time testing a hunch, we learned to kill an idea that wasn't working. Because, otherwise you can end up with a pretty cluttered business or product. Now, in more recent years, we've become much more data driven. Now that's not to say that we don't make kind of gut decision judgment calls at times, but we tend to do more research and be data driven, and look at numbers, to decide whether an experiment or a hypothesis is true or not, or what's the best way to go. Um, um, but even in that kind of environment that we find ourselves in now today, there's still a lot of kind of judgment calls that you have to make, and that's honed from years of work and trying it out. There's hard decisions like, well, we're only 95% there, and the rush is coming. Uh, we think we'll get all of it. Do we finish or do we pull back? Stuff like that. Hey, no, charge ahead. Let's go. We have to make calls like that are not perfect decisions. And I guess if I had been all 100% looking for perfect decisions along the way, those kind of choices would worry me more. They still trouble me a little bit. But I know sometimes you just have to do your best too with the best info you have and be ready for the outcome.
I mean, I think it'd be right to assume that at the early stages, you don't have as much perfect data. So you have to make a lot of those calls. And kind of just going back to the earlier days is, what were some of the things that you would be wanting to have in place that would allow you to be more comfortable making decisions, even when you don't have all the information? So what are some of the key insights you look for? Or at what point do you feel like, this is good enough for me to make a call?
Yeah. One thing that I love to have and we can never get enough of is conversations with our customers. Um, I don't you can kinda tabulate it and see if a lot of them are saying the same thing, but I we there's so much rich data that we can get from that and just wonderful ideas, as well. So I think one activity in gathering data, if it, for a systematic way, surveying customers is a great way to go. You can't beat the one-on-one conversations for, generating ideas and really understanding where your customer is coming from. I think you can't put too much weight on one conversation, and that's why it's important to talk to a lot of customers. And that's also why I say we can never have too much conversation there. So
I'm glad you shared that because that's also something I advocate a lot for is that there's nothing that beats the qualitative data of a conversation with potential customers, but making sure you don't get pigeonholed with that single one who might be an outlier.
exactly, that's the balance. That's the balance. Yep.
So the idea came almost 25 or exactly 25 years ago. And there's obviously been some massive growth. You guys having over 40 million people on the platform now. The idea came, you started getting to work. What were some of your initial successes or some of your first sales or customers that came in from this organization?
Oh, wow, that was so much fun. Well, we have, it's kind of like two-sided, for us. And we have our end user customers and we have our merchant partners as well. And in the first year, all the wins were around getting people to use Elfster, to use the site. And that was a combination of like a lot of pounding pavement. I was like telling all my friends, "Hey, try this out." I did this thing, or old friends, former coworkers, like, "Hey, why don't we get, the gang back together? Let's do a Secret Santa." I put together this app, my high school friends, all that kind of stuff. I started to lurk at online groups and things like that. There were people that were passionate about things. For example, I was lurking at. I tried to, be careful about that. Just spending time at places where I'd probably hang out anyways because I could really relate to the group. So there were music fan groups. I went to the Fish fans, online group, the REM fans at that time. And then I would say, "Hey, I love the band. This is a really cool community. Don't you think it'd be fun if you did a Secret Santa together? I can help you," that kind of thing. So pounding the pavement, lurking and lightly, trying to politely engage with online communities. And then I also was able to land some PR uh, in the first year. We had a number of really good mentions. One that was crazy was the Contra Costa Times, which is a local newspaper here in the East Bay, had a story featuring about Elfster, and they put on the masthead, even above the name of the paper, a picture of our elf and the name of the company. And it was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. When I finally pulled one out of the newsstand, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is amazing. And it's still, we're totally over concentrated in Contra Costa County ever since then.
So, Peter, it sounds to me like if I could pull on a stereotype, is that most people who are software engineers are not necessarily comfortable with sales, and you kind of have to develop it and get outside your comfort zone and get out and do it. And it sounds like you've been doing the sales part quite effectively. You kind of understood the importance of knocking on the doors, reaching out to your friends and families, and just like really opening up the doors by putting in the efforts in. Was that a trait you've always had? Was it something you were forced to develop? And I just kind of want to understand your relationship with sales.
Um, that was not so difficult for me to develop. I was always, fairly extroverted, and I would have never guessed myself to become a software engineer. But it was like the amazing opportunity of the time when I graduated college. It's like so I like that, and if anything, I got a little uncomfortable with the extreme. I would say almost like kind of solitude of how engineering felt sometimes. And I was interested in turning my career in a direction that would allow me to, kind of tap into other things as well. Um, So it 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 was something I enjoyed. I certainly wasn't like trained or great at it. Um, but I was not uncomfortable talking to people, or, approaching people even on the street, picture of the website, say, "Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think this is about?" Things like that. I didn't have a problem with that at all. I know, some people I've worked with like, "Wait, you're asking me to do what?" No, I don't want to approach the person on the street and ask them anything. For me, I was okay, doing that. I was, more or less extroverted kind of person, enjoy people um, and I was happy to try to connect that way.
So as a company grows, I've noticed the first thing kind of getting that product market fit, trying to see if there's some validation to the idea. It sounds like by knocking through the door, seeing the user growth and see people liking the software, you're starting to get the momentum of understanding like, hey, this is maybe a thing. But I'd be curious to know if there was like a moment where you went like, hey, this is gonna scale. Like this is it.
Mhm. There absolutely was. There definitely was. We had been kind of limping along doing campaigns for big brands. They could pay, enough money to keep the lights on or get another year, but they didn't renew. So it didn't really feel like we had a business. And one year we actually had a combination of things happen, but we did a big, campaign with Claire's, the retailer that makes, jewelry for kids mostly and things like that, and that was, really interesting because they wanted to white label the site, and we said, "Okay, we can do that for you." They were gonna run all this stuff in all the stores. It was great. Um, Part of the process is we worked with their designers at the top design agency to give Elfster like a total makeover and just for them. And it reflected what they did, so many brilliant ideas. It was a wonderful, design upgrade. It was pretty hokey. Elfster was pretty hokey, and then when they, did their part on it, it was like, "Whoa, this is incredible." So, yeah, they weren't gonna renew, after we did it, but we went back to the drawing board and said, "We gotta make Elfster more like this." And we added in things like an activity feed and more interactive widgets and more of the, pop of color that they had recommended. We just kinda took some of their great ideas and overlaid it on. We had a lot of heart and we had a great brand, but we put this fresh design approach on it. And that year, like our scalable revenue source, which had been very small, we had over 10x growth once we gave it more of this, kind of super designed makeover. And it was at that moment that I knew, oh my God, the more we scale our users, the better revenue we're going to make. And there is no end to this.
And so I want to go through that little period because you must have grown in head count, complexity in a very rapid way. So once you started seeing this amount of customers coming in, what happened internally?
Yeah, I mean the growth of the business in terms of count, as well as the growth in traffic, there are growing pains, and it's what's funny is like the company has not stopped growing ever since headcount and traffic, and the growing pains haven't stopped. It's like very different company when you go from like 1 to 5, and from 5 to 10 is a very, very different kind of company, and 10 to 20 or 20 to 30. I mean, like, these are, when that's where we're about right now in terms of full-time year-round people is 30 people. But each one of those steps is like so different. It's so completely different. And in that, it really forces, I mean, me personally to grow because I've done everything here. And now, there's so many other people doing it. And, to balance the concern or the strategic, like kind of focus that you had before. And also with balancing that with needing to let people bring the skills they have to try new things and, try to synthesize that and learn. It just really, I mean, it's really uh, caused me to uh, grow from a jack of all trades, who's kind of like doing everything to scrappy, put it together, and then a handful of people, working side by side like a team, to now with 30 people, it's like really a whole different game. And it stretches, I mean, it really stretches me to work in these different ways, growing pains all along the way. We're still growing and we're hiring more next year. And I think, there'll be new pains that I never used that muscle before. Wow, it's sore. you know?
Well, I'd be very curious to hear about what are some of the biggest things that had to change within you as you transition from being the jack of all trade to really stepping into a leadership kind of manager role.
Yeah. One thing is there are many things, and then sometimes they're a little bit at odds, right? So one of them is learning to let go, let like this thing that you have felt like you had a pretty good handle on. You're gonna let it go and hand it off to someone else to do, and you're getting the benefit of freeing yourself up, to think of other things and get help and have a little, less to do. But then you have the concern of got to make sure that it's handled, correctly. So learning how to do a handoff, for people, learning how to delegate for people, that's that's a part of it. Sometimes that's like kind of being able to explain what you do. Sometimes you have to go deeper. It's kind of like the philosophy of how I would make a decision about this. Let me explain to you how I would make a decision about this. Let me explain to you when it would be a signal that we have an issue and there's not. So it's just kind of like there's the handoff and delegation part of it, right? Then there's also the feedback and coaching part as well. Uh, you know, in terms of like always, certainly praising great work and encouraging people as they join the team, recognizing and showing gratitude for the work that's being done. And on the other side is also like offering constructive uh, ideas or observations and feedback and learning how, to do that. Not necessarily easy. And, you know, so, there's those kinds of things. And then of course, balancing like bringing in, new talent, allowing it to, the talent to kind of run with their things, keeping it within a strategic framework, so that you're still staying aligned and not running off in too many directions as you're adding new talent. Those are, and just learning to sit back and kind of guide these things a little bit, but not try to be too controlling. Those are, the, the push and pull that I felt as being a leader who's trying to grow, and I care deeply about the company and keeping it on track, but also, you know, taking advantage of the people we have, making the most and keeping us aligned. It's a it's a delicate balance.
One of the things I've noticed in the profile of Elfster is that throughout its history, it's actually never received any external funding. And for platforms such as this, it's very common to see people go out, raise investor funds, allow them to scale rapidly, spend fast, fail fast, all those terms that you would typically see in the Silicon Valley kind of world. But in your choice, you decide to go without the external funding. I'd be curious to know, some of the reasons that made you go that, the advantages that came with it, and why that was so important to you.
Yeah. Well, as a business that's very seasonal, I could make a lot of progress on Elfster and see it make progress the first, few years without quitting my job. I had work. I did stop full-time work. I worked as a consultant, so I'd have a little more flexibility. Um, but I didn't have to move it along, for that reason. So that really helped. Also, I think as a seasonal business, it wasn't and that kind of, the feedback loop was yearly at that point in time. It didn't really match what investors are looking for, that are making early investments like that. But I really didn't need it. That was, at first I didn't need it because it could be kind of a side hustle for a seasonal business. And then when we started making money, it's like, well, if it's profitable and we have what we need to grow, why take the investment? I did consider it. I have a close friend who's advised me, and he's been on the board since we, formed the corporation, and he works in Silicon Valley doing mergers and acquisitions. He kind of knows all those people and everything else, and he says, "Don't do it." I mean, if you don't need it, and it looks like you don't. He saw the books and everything else. Like, don't do it. It's gonna be way better if you don't have to. And, I always trusted him implicitly, and I think it's been good advice because as we're in a great position right now. You talking about love. I love this company. I don't wanna sell it. People tell me, "Why do you sell? Cash out, it'd be so easy." It's like, "Nope, I don't wanna do that." And if we had investors along, they'd really have to find an exit on a time frame, and I understand that. So I don't wanna commit to that. We can do it without, the investors. It's good company's going great, and we can think about a company that lasts instead of a company that flip for a sellout.
Now, I know at the heart of all this came from an idea that came from the sister. You saw the Secret Santa. You said we could probably make a technology go around this. But I've also seen, if you even look at social networks that had, the ideology of bringing people together, and then it seems like the technology kind of made us feel a little more isolated. I would just be curious to know about your future of gift giving as an idea, as something that's supported with technology, how it can continue to bring us together, and how your platform achieves that.
Yeah, well, wow, that's a great question. I feel like we've always felt, unlike a lot of social networks, our goal is not to keep you on the platform as long as possible. We want to help you. It's like a, family and friend productivity thing. You can get what you need when you need it, knowing like what your friends want, what's on your niece's wish list, or things like that. But we're not trying to keep you there forever. So we have we stay focused on what is the job that we want to do, and that goes down to our mission, which is to strengthen social bonds by increasing acts of generosity. It's not by increasing minutes on the site or lengthening the session or anything else, but just making it easier for people to give amongst friends and family. So, what in a way, what makes us different. We're not making boatloads of money like those companies that can keep people there forever. And I got to keep my streak going for 300 days, or, this or that. So we will never make the boatloads of money like that. But we can continue to grow as a platform if we just help with the job to do. It's like to support people, provide a platform to help bring them together through giving. And there are we know other things beyond Secret Santa that we're doing now and that we can continue to do and grow and increase our impact. And we don't have to do it at the expense of their time with friends and family. Let's make it efficient and spend your time with friends and family. People love us anyway, even though they don't spend all day on the platform.
Well, Peter, it sounds like you've built a great company that's very focused on doing one thing extremely well. And you've built a culture and an organization that seems to live of its values of connection and joy. And with that, I kind of wanted to open the space for you as someone who's been, always had an interest in entrepreneurship. You've built this organization as an entrepreneur as well. And I would be giving you the microphone, and you're in a room of entrepreneurs. And I feel like you might have a message. If you could like bonk people on the head to make them realize a truth that you've discovered on your journey as an entrepreneur, what would be the core essence that you would want every other entrepreneur to know?
Well, I I do feel like for other entrepreneurs, I love you. I love you, guys and gals out there, entrepreneurs. It's not for everybody. It's so exciting. I love it. And if you love, building the business, building your service or product and really making your customers happy, I hope you can stick with it and find a way, and get through, because I I love the entrepreneurship. We think of it often as starting a business. And that's certainly true. But if you can, you know, build that business and continue to operate it and run and grow the business, it's just such a wonderful and satisfying thing. I think all entrepreneurs kind of get a sense of that. I also feel like it's just for me, and I don't know if this is going to resonate for everybody, but if you built that business and you love it, um, you don't have to shoot for selling it. I think a lot of people think, "Oh, I love this. I'm very passionate about this mission, and I will develop it for 4 years and sell it, and then I'll go, sip mai tais and stuff like that." Um, I feel like that is a great path for some people, but it doesn't have to be. So if you're the kind of entrepreneur that just really loves your work and your customers and your team, like you can stick with it, and it gets better. It gets better. So that would be my message to entrepreneurs out there. You don't have to follow the usual uh, playbook.
Well, Peter, I'm so glad we got to have a conversation and I got to discover a bit more from Elfster. I think it's the perfect time to have this type of episode. We're just getting into the holiday season. So we're going to put some links for any of you who want to organize your own Secret Santa. You'll be able to find that into the show notes. If you've wanted to connect with your friends, loved one, family, maybe even within the workplace, and a Secret Santa is something you wanted to organize, you're now aware of a great platform that exists to be able to allow you to do that. And through your story, Peter, we've gone to see a journey of entrepreneurship through the various stages of what you were able to create. And it sounds like something that a lot of entrepreneurs would be aspiring to be able to build a great team, have a product they love, and not get burnt out in the process. Although it's a lot of work, it sounds like you've also found a great balance through it. So we're great to have you as a role model and very excited to see what comes from Elfster in the future as well.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I love what you're doing here.
It was an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Jason Marc Campbell Business Podcast. If you enjoyed that episode and you want to dig deeper into other topics, we have some more episodes that we've linked here. Some of them are related to sales, other on business, and even some on being more productive at work. Whatever it is you're interested in, we have so many episodes that are being listed on this channel. So please dig in, enjoy, and of course, keep selling with love.